In an age of Bob McKenzie's retirement and full retirement, there is a gaping hole in terms of NHL scout surveys of who they will have in their NHL rankings heading into a draft. That's where my colleague at Elite Prospects, Cam Robinson, steps in as we are breaking down the first edition of Cam's consensus, looking at the early top 15 rankings of 8 NHL scouts.
You are Locked On NHL Prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, and welcome back to Locked On NHL Prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On this show, we break down everything prospects related for you 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. I'm your host, Sebastian High, the USA Scout over at Elite Prospects. And on today's show, we'll be breaking down a really exciting article posted by my colleague Cam Robinson as he polled 8 NHL scouts on their top prospects in this upcoming NHL draft class, and the results are fascinating. We're going to break down the unanimous number 1 pick, Gavin McKenna, a surprise name at number 2, and so much more on today's show. So make yourselves comfortable, lean back, grab yourself a drink, and let's just dive straight into the episode here because we have a lot to talk about and we have a lot of interesting players to highlight, and I think some interesting trends as well in this year's draft class that will become increasingly clear as the year progresses, but are always, at the forefront when you poll actual NHL scouts. So let's start off here at number 1 because there is absolutely no disagreement here. It was a unanimous vote at number 1. All 8 NHL scouts had Gavin McKenna at first overall, and there's no shock here whatsoever. Gavin McKenna has been a special talent for a number of years now already. He's stood out from his exceptional status rookie campaign in the WHL and now all the way through to his D-1 season where he absolutely dominated the CHL ranks, whether it be in WHL or at the Memorial Cup. 56 games, 41 goals, 88 assists for 129 points in just 56 games. That is a 2.3 points per game average. That is absolutely insane. And on the ice, this player is truly special in the way he thinks the game, the pace, the processing speed, and more than anything, just the raw creativity and skill, whether it be his shot, his playmaking ability, his hands. This player is number 1 in this year's draft class, in my opinion, and truly a player with special upside. And to be able to watch him closely this season at Penn State University as the USA Scout at EP, I feel really, really honored and just lucky to be able to watch a player with this much talent. I mean, last year, the player I'd ranked highest in my region, I had an interview with here on the channel in Václav Nestrashil, who went 25th overall to the Chicago Blackhawks. Gavin McKenna, much as I like Nestrashil, is another tier of talent. He is truly, truly special. Franchise caliber piece. Definitely the best prospect that we've seen since Connor Bedard, who was coincidentally his cousin through marriage. So there's your little fun fact of the day. And Gavin McKenna he swept the results here of NHL scouts for good reason. One quote from a scout was that this is McKenna's year. Anyone who is questioning that at this point is just doing so for attention. And I couldn't agree more. If you want to put another player at number 1, I guess, if you want to, but you're not going to be correct in that take long term or short term or at any point in time, in my opinion, or at least the chances of that being the correct take down the line are extraordinarily low. So Gavin McKenna finishing number 1, no surprises there whatsoever, but things get a bit more interesting at number 2 because we all knew that Gavin McKenna is the number 1 guy going into this year's class, but number 2 has been contested between a number of names for quite some time now, whether it be the big right shot defenseman Keaton Verhoeff, who we're going to talk about in a second, or even guys like Ivar Stenberg, high skill winger out of Sweden, Viggo Bjork, who broke all the records in Sweden as an undersized winger. There's a lot of skill in this year's draft class, but At number 2, we have a player that I absolutely fell in love with last season. I watched him a bunch. Teammate of Václav Nestorshiel's last year with the Muskegon Lumberjacks, Tynan Lawrence, a Canadian average-sized centerman who is here at number 2 because he is the best center available in the draft class. It is not a deep year for centers. There's a lot of wingers, there's a lot of defensemen, but down the middle, there's a little bit less depth, and certainly at the upper end of the draft, not all that many options, but Tynan Lawrence offers just about everything you could possibly want from a player in this position. He's 6 feet tall, 168 pounds, not the biggest guy, but he is a competitor. He's got that dog in him. There's so much to love with how he approaches the game of hockey. He brings speed, he brings skill, creativity, dynamism. He can put his team on his shoulders as he did through the playoffs last year in the USHL as the Muskegon Lumberjacks, the 4th seed in the conference, went all the way to the finals and won. And Tynan Lawrence was their best player on more nights than he wasn't in that playoff run, just as he was in the regular season. A roster that included a first-round selection in Václav Nestorshiel, a highly touted prospect in Ivan Ryabkin. Tynan Lawrence was the best of the bunch all of the time. So intelligent, so speedy. There's so much to love with his two-way engagement, the details, the combination of polish in his game in all facets and all 3 zones, as well as the game-breaking upside. This player is special, and I'm glad to see that reflected as well in this polled NHL scouts. And yeah, he was easily the best player in the USHL last season, so I think that this ranking is certainly worthwhile. And the quote that Cam included from the scout is, "There are so many wingers in this class, and so few natural centers, and this kid is the best center available. He elevated in the Clark Cup last year and led his team to a championship. Beyond the skill, he's a total gamer." Total gamer, I think, is a fantastic way of describing his game. He really is that fun to watch. Just have a massive smile plastered to my face every single time I logged in for reviewing. And the USHL can be a frustrating league to evaluate at times. So to have a player who just makes you giddy to watch, that's something that stands out massively. At number 3, we have the aforementioned big right shot defenseman, Keaton Verhoeven, who played some excellent hockey with the Victoria Royals last season. In 63 games in the WHL, he scored 21 goals and 45 points. He's off to college hockey as well this season, so a full top 3 sweep of players in my region of elite prospects in my coverage this season, which I feel very lucky about. And Verhoeven is 6'4", 212 pounds. He's also a young player for the draft class as a June 19th, 08 birthday, and he just brings so much to the equation. He got 3 second-place votes as well among the NHL scouts, and he's a player that brings some real level of skill and offensive creativity, the ability to create things out of nothing from the blue line, as well as some physicality defensively, an active stick, a real upside as a two-way monster. There's definitely still some polish that he has to round out in his game in terms of decision-making and consistency, and overall, there are definitely some mental gaffes that occur with this player, but that's to be expected for a guy who at 16, 17 years old was given massive, massive minutes in the WHL, and I think the University of North Dakota, where he's heading this season, is going to be a fantastic place for him to keep refining his game because they play with a really solid defensive structure. He's going to be able to really add some maturity to the defensive details of the game, and also perhaps give him that opportunity to create offense from within the structure, just as he will be asked to do once he makes the jump to the National Hockey League. So a lot to look forward to there in terms of the top end talent in this year's draft class. But that wraps up this first segment. In the next one, we're going to break down the range of guys ranked 4th all the way through number 8. But first, a quick message from our sponsors here at Locked On NHL Prospects. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's where Monarch Money comes in. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on either your laptop or your phone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives. If you put off organizing your finances, Monarch is made for you. It does all the heavy lifting on your behalf. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization on your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever needing to touch a spreadsheet a single time. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNHL. All right, let's keep this episode rolling here in the second segment as we go beyond the top three and look at some more fascinating names in this year's NHL draft. And one player that I know is just an absolute pet favorite of so many scouts already this early in the draft cycle. At number 4, we have Ryan Lynn, a right shot defenseman from the Vancouver Giants in the WHL, and he scored 53 points in 60 games last season as a draft -1 blue liner, played really well as well for Team Canada at the U18 World Championships. And there's so many details to this player's game that stand out as special. He's a guy whose points just constantly flow from his stick. He's creative, he's mobile, and he has great two-way habits. This guy brings a ton of offense, but not at the detriment of his defensive impact. He still is a defenseman, first and foremost, who tries to keep play to the outside, really active stick, really great defensive skater. He angles opponents to the outside, and he's a player that just brings a little bit of everything. And the NHL scout said, and I quote, "He's going to play at 6 foot and 190 pounds, and that will be just fine." He's a thinker and someone that we expect will take another leap in offense this year, with Vancouver running a more up-tempo style. So look for him to just explode in terms of production this campaign with the Giants, and definitely a guy that is leading the pack in terms of the myriad of puck-moving blue liners that we have here in the top 15 range. There's so many guys, as we'll be breaking down here throughout the show. And next, we have a player that does not fall into that category at all, actually, and it's a big power winger, Ethan Belchitz of the Windsor Spitfires. He's a left winger, 6'5", 227 pounds. And last season in Windsor, he scored 17 goals and 38 points in 56 games. And yeah, he brings massive size, but he brings that real level of power blend with skill. That combination is something that we do have a couple guys up in this year's draft class, but nobody does so as cohesively, at this stage at least, as Ethan Belchitz, a guy with a really wicked shot, who really just brings a heavy down-low game. He's an absolute pain to play at the net front. He's able to box out defenders, make goaltenders completely blind with his massive frame, and his timing around that area is just impeccable for his age. And that combination of top 5 skill with power details, that down low game, flashes of two-way details as well. There's just so much to love here. This is a really special talent, and he really impressed at the Hlinka Gretzky tournament for Team Canada. Truly a unique player in this year's class, and one NHL scout compared him stylistically to James Van Riemsdyk. And considering that JVR has had a fantastic NHL career and just a perpetual 35-30 goal scorer, I think you could do a whole lot worse when you also get all of the intangibles that come with the impact of a power game, especially come the postseason. At number 6, we have Mathis Preston from the Spokane Chiefs, a sniper of a right winger. He's not the biggest guy in the world, 5'11", 168 pounds, but man, is this guy skilled. He has some real elements of Berkeley Catton in his game. All-out speed. He loves to take defenders on one-on-one. He sometimes tries to do everything on his own to a fault, but at this age, that allows him to explore his offense and explore his skill set, see just how dominant he can be. And at the Hlinka Gretzky tournament, he truly was dominant for the Canadiens. A really, really exciting player who just brought constant offense. He scored 4 goals and 7 points in 5 games at that tournament, following a 23-goal and 45-point campaign in 54 games with Spokane. He's so slippery. He's able to get out of congested spaces with such agility and grace. And the elite offensive package that he has with that shot, with the creativity, with the dynamism and speed. Apart from McKenna, there's no player perhaps in this draft class with more individual skill, according to one NHL scout, because his elusiveness is just on another level compared to the rest of the forwards in this class. There's some worry about his size, but his skill just will overcome it. And I think that's kind of the point to take home about Mathis Preston. He's 5'11 and 168, sure, but he brings elite elements across the board with the puck on a stick, and he has a really good offensive mind to boot. At number 7, we've got Ivar Stenberg from Frölunda in the SHL. He's been developing there last year as well, where he got into 25 games at the pro level. He's certainly one of the older players in this year's draft class, as a September 30th, 07 birthday, just 2 weeks after the cutoff for 2025. But at the J20 level with Frölunda, he had 26 goals and 53 points in just 27 games. That is truly obscene, just ridiculous numbers there for Ivar Stenberg. And he's a player that just brings so much skill to the equation on top of a high-end motor and a whole bunch of speed. And that combination of tenacity and speed and skill is something that just sets players apart. We've seen it in previous seasons with guys like Victor Eklund, but Ivar Stenberg still is an echelon above Eklund's, and Eklund was one of my favorite players in this previous draft class. So Stenberg is certainly a player to watch, and one NHL scout says he might be ready next season, but best to leave him at home for another year. But I think that goes to show just how refined the details are with a player like Ivar Stenberg. He finished at number 2 on our first rankings of the season at Elite Prospects, number 7 here, but the overall range in this tier of the draft is still really, really tight. There's no player that I think has truly separated themselves at number 2 just yet in the class. So everything in terms of the elite skill between number 2 and number 8, number 9, number 10, anywhere in that range, these are all such special players. We are spoiled for choice in this year's draft class, but it does make our job a little bit more difficult because we have to rank these players, and there is certainly difficulty in that, but Ivar Stenberg is a player to watch. At number 8, we've got Ryan Rubrick of the Niagara Ice Dogs, a sniping left winger who has a massive frame at 6'4" and 190 pounds. He's still filling that out, and he's also one of the older guys in the draft class, born just 10 days after the cutoff for 2025. But he scored 41 goals in 64 games with the Niagara Ice Dogs last season, and he added 46 assists for 87 points. That's 1.36 points per game. Ridiculous level of production. He was dominant as well at the U18 World Championships for Team Canada, scoring 4 goals and 9 points in 7 games. And this is a guy who, I believe, scored the most goals as a D-1 player in the OHL since John Tavares. It's been a while. It's been quite a long time, and no player was able to do that apart from Ryan Rubrick in the last 15 years. He's 6'4", as I mentioned, and he's just excellent at the net front as well. He's a guy that had a bit of variance as well in terms of his rankings. Some people had him as high as number 2, and others had him significantly lower in the teens, because there's still some concerns perhaps about the overall effort level, the consistency. There's definitely still question marks with Rubrick, but the tools are fantastic. The scoring upside is high. The power game is certainly projectable to the NHL, and he's an exciting player to watch. Last but not least, for the second segment, we've got Daxon Rudolph, a right shot defenseman from the Prince Albert Raiders in the WHL. Another one of these average sized elite puck movers. He's 6'1", 194 pounds, and he scored 41 points in 64 games last season. he's a guy that just brings incredible play stopping ability on top of smooth skating and high end offensive skill. He can do a bit of everything at a pretty high end level. You're not really sacrificing any one element if you're going out and selecting Daxon Rudolph, apart from maybe like standout physicality, but that's just not his game. One scout said, I haven't seen it with Daxon just yet. He's a vanilla right-hand guy with a good wrister, so perhaps still needs to have an element to separate himself where he stands out as elite in a single category among this grouping of players. But the overall toolkit is so projectable. He played some excellent hockey in the WHL last season, and that was the only team of the 8 scouts that polled that had any doubts about this player. So certainly an exciting guy to watch. But that wraps things up here for the second segment. And the final one will wrap things up with players ranked 10 through 15, as well as a couple honorable mentions to give shout outs to. But first, a quick message from our sponsors here at Locked On NHL Prospects. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure that you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however you like to bet, whether it's player props, building same-game parlays, or even jumping in on the action live as it's unfolding right in front of you on the couch in the living room. The choice truly is yours with FanDuel. I personally love building same-game parlays. I love taking multiple swings on different players that I think are getting hot or getting cold, depending on your style of betting, and combining them in order to maximize any possible return. So, are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app right now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. All right, let's wrap up the show here in the final segment, breaking down the Cam's consensus article, which is, of course, linked in the description down below. Please do give it a look. Put in a lot of work here from Cam Robinson, who polled, again, 8 NHL scouts in his research for this project, and certainly also a project that will be continued throughout the season, and we will keep covering it here on the channel because we support our friends here on the podcast. And I also just think it's fantastic that somebody is stepping into the Bob McKenzie role of polling NHL scouts and putting together rankings that reflect a bit more accurately what the private consensus is within the league rather than just our public echo chamber, because we can certainly get a bit too influenced from one another's takes as we see every single draft class, whether it be within the elite prospect itself or between public scouting outlets. So this is a very important resource on top of central scouting for us to kind of calibrate our rankings a little bit. At number 10, we have another record breaker from Sweden, and that's Viggo Bjork from Djurgården IF. He's going to potentially play in the SHL this season as Djurgården gained promotion back to the top tier of Swedish hockey, because he has nothing left to prove at the J20 level. He broke records, broke all the records seemingly at that level as an undersized center. He's only 5'9" and 172 pounds, the smallest player in this tier of players in this ranking that we're talking about today. But 27 goals and 47 assists for 74 points in 42 games as a 16-year-old in a U20 league. He led the entire league in points. That's just obscene, truly insane stuff there from Viggo Bjork, who just snuck into the top 10 of this ranking. And an Eastern Conference scout did add, he's a little undersized and a little slow-footed, which isn't ideal, but he can make something out of nothing. That game-breaking ability, the skill to create things out of virtually nowhere, the playmaking ability to unpick compact defenses like few other players in this draft class can, set him apart as a truly special talent. So Viggo Bjork is certainly a guy that could rise on boards as well if he continues to give reason to believe that his size and his slightly subpar skating will not hold him back at the next level. And if he's able to score at the SHL level, that's certainly going to go a long way in doing so. At number 11, we have an OHL right shot defenseman in Chase Reed of the Sioux Greyhounds, a guy who played fantastic hockey last year in the OHL. 7 goals and 40 points in 39 games from the back end in his rookie campaign in the Ontario Hockey League. Really, really impressive things there. And he's 6'2", 187 pounds. He's got really good range and mobility, and the NHL tools are just really, really great across the board. Whether it be his explosiveness, his edge work, the quick transitions that let him create quick exits and just do them so cleanly. This guy is a true pace pusher from defense. And while the reads are certainly still kind of like adjusting, or still kind of catching up to the average around this range, this high end range of the draft, you got to give him a little bit of leeway considering that he was playing in the NAHL with the Bismarck Bobcats last season before making the jump to the OHL. So certainly a guy that has a really upward trend in his development, and a player that just has fantastic puck moving capabilities and could certainly be a top 4 piece in the NHL someday. Then we have another undersized defenseman, this time from the QMJHL and the Blainville-Boisbriand Armada. One of my favorite players to watch in this year's class, a truly dynamic talent, Xavier Villeneuve, a guy who models his game after Lane Hutson, and it's just plain obvious. His shoulder shimmy is modeled after Hutson. He's able to shake off players, beat them one-on-one, create space where seemingly there is none to be had, and just consistently create elite level offensive opportunities from the blue line like very few forwards in this draft class are able to do at that level. He's really dynamic. He's an elite level skater. He has a level of speed that even Lane Hutson did not have to any capacity in his draft year, let alone his D-1 campaign. And he has so much manipulation, every aspect of his game. His eyes, his hips, his feet, everything are made to deceive opponents, and it just allows him to so consistently beat guys one-on-one, one-on-two, truly creating things out of nothing. He's elite in transition. I watched him live last season, and the amount of plays he was able to create off the rush at speed, manipulating, beating guys, and just cutting to the inside and setting a teammate up for a grade A opportunity. This guy can do it all offensively. He can still be guilty of overhandling sometimes. It's always kind of a detriment with players that are just so elite with the puck on their sticks at this age. They're still kind of figuring out where to limit themselves, perhaps. But he, with his vision, with his puck skills, with his power play quarterbacking ability, where he's just such a natural, he has clear top 15 potential. And a Western Conference scout said he's electric in the offensive zone. He's right in that mold of an undersized dynamic defenseman like Elaine Hutson, like an Axel Sandin Pellikka. So being ranked right here around that 10 to 15 range makes certain sense, but for me, he's a top 10 player in this class. At number 13, we've got Carson Carrolls of the Prince George Cougars in the WHL, a left shot defenseman who stands at 6'1" and 174 pounds, and he's incredibly smart and mobile. He's a really, really great instinctive offensive player, really good in terms of extending possessions, not trying to do too much with the puck on the stick. The points are hopefully going to explode a little bit this season, as he had 35 points in 60 games last year, which is solid but not spectacular. But he is also young for this year's class. He's a June 23rd 08 birthday, and he's just so steady in all 3 zones. He's a fantastic play killer. The transition defending, the range, the mobility, the gap control, these are all things where he's among the best guys in this entire class. So Carson Carrolls is a name to remember. At number 14, we've got Malte Gustafsson from HV71 in Sweden, another defenseman. You can see just how many blue liners there are at the top end of this year's class. And Gustafsson brings a real level of size to the equation. He's 6'4", 190 pounds, same frame as Ryan Rubrick, and he brings such a smooth element of skating to the equation, and he has fantastic rush defending habits and awareness. Like his gap management, his overall sense of when to step up to kill a play, when to defer and maybe let players come into into his own defensive zone in order to smother them into the boards, but he's constantly angling rushes to the outside, and he has such a long and active stick. He's truly a marauding defenseman on that defensive side of the game, and on puck as well. He's calm, he's calculated, not as dynamic as other blue liners in this range, but he brings a different toolkit to the equation, right? He has that size, he has physical elements, really refined decision making, and with a bit more strength to the equation, this guy could certainly be a top 4 NHL defenseman. Last but not least, in the top 15 of these rankings, we've got Oliver Suvanto, a big left shot center out of Tappara in Finland, set at 6'3", 205 pounds, very young for the draft class, as a September 3rd, 08 birthday. Less than 2 weeks off from being eligible for 2027. Very, very young. And he's still one of the best players in this draft class in both size, physicality, and skill. So much to love here. He appeared on 3 lists of the 8 scouts and earned the tiebreaker win for the last spot with 6th and 9th place votes, respectively. So there is a scout in the NHL out there right now who has Oliver Suvanto ranked at 6th overall. And a scout, I'm not sure if it's this scout, says, every year is the same thing. In September, everyone's excited for skill wingers, but by June, when it's decision time, teams elevate a center with size. Suvanto is the only player in this class who checks that box. And I think that's a very astute observation. This is a profile of guy who goes top 10 every single year. And yeah, this year's draft class is a very deep one, a very skilled one. But there are some limitations, both in terms of the breadth of big guys and of pivots. And when you have a player who's both of those things, he's probably going to go higher than he's ranked right now. And he's also just so young for the class. He has so much to offer. And I think he's definitely a guy to keep an eye on in terms of a potential riser over the coming months. A couple other players that got some votes inside the top 15. Marcus Nordmark almost made the cut, was just edged out by Suvanto. American center Jack Hextall from the Youngstown Phantoms is a really detailed, intelligent playmaker down the middle. Excellent two-way habits. He's intense. He has some really good physical aspects as well as Russian centerman Yegor Shilov, who played in the USHL last year, but switched over to the QMJHL this campaign. Also brings a real high-end level of intelligence, playmaking, play driving, and physicality. And I think just like with Suvanto, there aren't many players that do that as centers in this year's class, so Yegor Shilov is definitely a player to keep in mind. But that wraps up today's episode. Thank you so much for tuning in here, as always. I hope that you enjoyed this look at NHL scouts' perspectives on who the favorites are to go high in the upcoming draft class, and I'd love to hear your thoughts as well. Who are you surprised to see high or low or left off the board entirely? And what are your thoughts in terms of your disagreements with these rankings? I'd love to hear from your thoughts down below, but that is it. That is all. Thank you so much for listening. As always, I'm your host, Sebastian High, and I'll catch you tuning in again very, very soon.